what do we call this one? Artistic ways to crash your car?
It's paint as you go, paint as you go. There is something in my brain that clicks when I move. Shh, if you come really close, you can hear it clicking.
Yes, I can really hear it. When they said artists have a long life expectancy, I think they forgot to count you in.
Don't worry, I think I have insurance.
You think?
And according to my calculations, all I have to do is drive for a while, the inspiration will hit me, and my next plein air show will be all wrapped up. Ooh, I better let the galleries know right now.
Wait. Do you want to drive and paint like this?
Exactly. Trust me, I have it all figured out. It's about 5 hours for one painting. Want 20 paintings, I'd have to go for 100 hours. Oh, it's so much easier if I just show you.
Elizabeth, this is crazy!
Bye!
I kind of want to see what happens.
911, what's your emergency?
Oh, hi. I have a delusional artist in need of medical attention. Hi, welcome to Art Adventures. I'm Adriana Eftimie.
And I'm Elizabeth Whelan, and today we're talking about artists without borders. So the art world has always been a melting pot of different perspectives and ideas, cultural influences, immigration and migration. They've all played a pivotal role in shaping the art world. So why do artists migrate?
Artists migrate for both personal and professional reasons. They may relocate for better access to artistic opportunities, maybe looking for a city with more vibrant art scene, prestigious art institutions for higher quality artistic education. Maybe they seek environments to connect with other artists, exhibit their work, and engage with a different audience. In the late 19th century, American artists by hundreds, including James Whistler, John Singer Sargent, Mary Cassatt, were drawn to Paris to learn to paint and to establish their reputations. This painting by Sargent, named The Sketchers, was painted in Italy in 1913 and captures two of Sargent's sketching companions. Here we have a painting by Winslow Homer, artist sketching in the White Mountains from 1868. Artists also left their home countries due to political instability, lack of artistic freedom, censorship, or limited support for their arts. For example, many artists left France during the Reign of Terror, a very violent period following the French Revolution. Elizabeth, you and I both are immigrants, right?
Right, yeah.
It's indeed fun to travel and explore and see so many beautiful things, but sometimes it can be so hard to start from scratch.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you?
Well, when I moved from England to Canada, I was really young, so that was an easy move. But coming to the United States when I was older, that was a lot more tough. I think when you leave your country, when you're older, you have a bit more of a sense of what you're leaving behind. But I got the travel bug, and I moved around quite a bit after that, including on a sailboat. And I really think that all of those experiences have improved my art and also made me much more aware of, when I meet people, finding out their stories, learning about a locale. So I think it's all influenced my art really well. What about you?
That's true. It's the culture of it. You really
Exactly.
want to discover more and know more. Well, for me, I also have the travel bug. That's true. My parents actually, when I was young, they sent me in all kinds of trips, even,
that's
with the
great.
school and everything. They
Yeah.
didn't miss a chance to just get rid of me. So thank you for that. But, when I first moved here, it was quite a few years ago. The biggest challenge for me, I think it was the language, because
Oh, right.
I had to learn everything. Learning a new language is like actually learning a new way of painting. Yes,
Yeah.
so that was the challenging part. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I love to travel. I traveled through about 40 states in America, so I
Oh,
really
that's
love that.
great.
I love that.
Yeah, and it is really fun once you start to move like that. You do realize you can pick up and go anywhere.
So when did artists start migrating?
Well, I think we've been on the move since the dawn of time. But more recently, we can really see that there was an upsurge in artistic migration during the Renaissance and Baroque periods. So that's the 14th to the 17th centuries, when artists traveled all across Europe. So artists with good connections, it always helps to have good connections and a good network, would be recommended to high-level officials in another country for like royal portraits or religious sculptures for a church or landscapes for palaces. And patrons might move around as well, taking their artists with them, and introductions would smooth the way for artists to travel from home. One such artist was Domenikos Theotokopoulos, and we know him more commonly as El Greco. He was a leading figure of the Spanish Renaissance, but he really came from Greece, and he studied art on the island of Crete. He came from a really prominent family, so when he went to Italy to study, he stayed with the great patron of the arts, Cardinal Alessandro Farnese. He was introduced around and picked up new styles and techniques. He particularly liked the work of Titian and Tintoretto. But by some accounts, El Greco thought rather a lot of himself and his talents. He even suggested to Pope Pius V that the Pope should allow him to repaint Michelangelo's work in the Sistine Chapel.
Oh, wow.
He didn't really think it was all that well done. So after several fallings out, he then moved on to Spain, first to Madrid, where he had hoped to gain the favor of King Philip II. But the king wasn't really taken with his style. And El Greco continued on to Toledo, Spain. That's Toledo, Spain, not Ohio, which at the time was a major religious center. And he finally found a successful painting life and the reputation that he craved. So this painting, Saint Martin and the Beggar, depicts a legend in the life of a Christian saint named Martin, cut off half of his cloak and gave it to a beggar, which I guess was a big deal at that time because it got him made a saint. After the Renaissance, the era of colonialism and imperialism, and that was from really the 16th to the 20th centuries, saw artists migrating alongside European powers. So they would often, as colonies were being created, artists often accompanied the expeditions, painting as they went and documenting the travels. So one such artist explorer was Thomas Baynes. He was born in 1820. He was an English artist and explorer. And as a young man, he was apprenticed as a coach painter. So what that means was he was painting like decorations on stagecoaches and that kind of thing.
I thought it was something else.
Exactly. And when he was about 22, he left England for South Africa. He worked for a while in Cape Town as a landscape and a portrait artist, and then as an official war artist for the British Army. In 1855, he joined a Royal Geographic Society sponsored expedition across northern Australia as the official artist and storekeeper. I can't imagine what that must have been like. You know, the expedition's purpose was to evaluate the entire northern area of Australia in terms of its suitability for colonial settlement. And then, this is the thing that I would have loved to have been with him on this trip. In 1858, Baynes accompanied explorer David Livingstone along the Zambezi River in Africa. So the Zambezi is Africa's fourth largest river. It's 1,600 miles long and runs across Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, and Angola. So Baynes was one of the first white men to view the spectacular Victoria Falls, which are about halfway along. Oh, wow. And so here's one of the prints made from a Thomas Baynes painting. It shows the audience back home the majesty of Victoria Falls. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, we talk about these artists who accompany these expeditions. They would paint paintings, and those would be shipped back to wherever they came from, and engravings would be made. And that's what this is. This is a colored engraving. And that's how the general populace would know what was going on. So, and of course now it's much easier to travel and exhibit our work internationally. You know, the rise of social media and the internet really allows artists to connect and share their work with global audiences in ways that would astound artists of a century ago. So can you give me an example of an immigrant artist who had great success in a new country?
Oh, yes. I have the perfect example. It's Pablo Picasso. He was born in Spain in 1881 and later moved to France in 1904. His decision to migrate to Paris in his early 20s marked a turning point in his career. He began experimenting with a number of styles and produced his own original paintings, reflected in his Blue period, which depicted themes of poverty, loneliness, and despair in blue tones, and Rose period with more pleasant themes of clowns for those who love clowns, and Carnival performers depicted in more cheerful, vivid hues. In France, Picasso became an integral part of the avant-garde art scene, mingling with other distinguished artists and intellectuals of that time. Picasso's artistic boldness and unique style gained attention and acclaim, propelling him to international fame. His works, such as Les Demoiselles d'Avignon or Guernica, are regarded as masterpieces and have had a lasting impact on the art world. Picasso's success as an immigrant artist in France not only solidified his position as one of the greatest artists of the 20th century, but demonstrated the transformative power of migration in an artist's career. Picasso was able to flourish creatively because of all of the opportunities he encountered in France, because he had the freedom of creating without political constraints and was inspired by many French artists like Paul Cézanne and Henri Rousseau. Now, did women artists immigrate as much as men, Elizabeth?
Well, I think the societal limitations women have faced all the way around have historically slowed us down to the detriment of the arts, but I'm always amazed to hear about the many women who rose above the odds. And one such artist was Elizabeth Nourse. She was born in Mount Healthy, Ohio in 1859, and she got her initial training at the McMicken School of Design in Cincinnati. After her parents' death when she was 23, she moved to New York for a few months to get some art instruction. She painted in Tennessee and Cincinnati for a couple of years, making her living in art, which was a pretty big deal, and then moved to Paris in 1887. And that was a brave move for a young woman in the mid-1800s. But she was sure of her ability, and she had desire for further art education and all that was to be found in Paris. And it must have sounded very exciting. She attended the Académie Julian, one of the few schools to admit women, where she quickly finished her studies and opened her own studio. She won many awards in international expositions, and she exhibited in major galleries.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. So other American women artists who have traveled to Paris included Lois Milo Jones. And she was an African-American woman from a well-to-do Boston family. In 1937, while teaching at Howard University, she received a fellowship to study at the Académie Julian in Paris that we just talked about. But she said that Africa and Haiti showed her more about art. Her travels there deeply influenced the direction of her work over the decades. And years earlier, her mentor, who was sculptor Meta Warwick Fuller, advised Jones that she would need to go abroad to launch her successful career. And Milo Jones heeded that advice. Fuller was speaking from experience. She had studied in Paris, attending the Académie des Beaux-Arts in 1899, from which she was introduced to the sculptor Auguste Rodin, which would have been so cool. And he took her on as a student. And with his sponsorship, Fuller made significant progress in her career. You know, it really helps to have somebody, you know, who can introduce you around. And would she have made the same strides if she had not traveled abroad? You know, it is unlikely that she would have had anywhere near the opportunities that she deserved had she not made that journey. So here's a sculpture by Fuller called Emancipation. It's now in Boston, created in 1913 to honor the 50th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. And I'm going to go and check that out because I didn't realize it was in Boston.
I will join you.
So how much do you think cultural impact affects the artwork of an artist who keeps on moving?
Well, all artists are looking for the new hot spot to get noticed.
That's for sure.
Like Paris was for a very long time and still is, to make connections, to explore and get inspired. It's also important for artists to have the idea of breaking free of the old ways to make room for new ways, new ideas, innovation. Discovering a new culture does that. It's an immersive experience and it translates into the canvas sooner or later if the artist spends enough time in that environment. Like it happened with Paul Gauguin, who was a self-taught painter with the desire to break free from conventional artistic norms. He started by admiring the works of Impressionists, specifically the use of color and light, as we can see in this painting called Pears and Grapes, that he painted towards the beginning of his career. Both he and his friend Van Gogh were fascinated with the Japanese prints, and he slowly but surely introduced the Japanese culture in his paintings, as we can see here. Still life with onions, beetroot, and Japanese print. However, he grew disappointed with the limitations. He was always disappointed with the limitations of the art market and the constraints of traditional artistic techniques. He began to travel regularly to the South Pacific in the early 1890s, where he developed a new style that married everyday observation with symbolism, a style strongly influenced by the primitive arts of Africa, Asia, and French Polynesia. There was also a big change in the way he approached painting during his first visit in Tahiti, as we can see in this painting named Black Pigs. He experimented a lot more with color and working from imagination. This was actually one of Gauguin and Van Gogh's big debates. They were friends, right? And they always had this spirited argument that Gauguin thought that it's great to work from imagination as an artist, is recommended. And Van Gogh argued that no, you have to be inspired from life. You have to pay attention to what's around us. Now, even though they admire each other's paintings and they were close friends, their stubbornness got away in their friendship, and eventually they fell apart.
Wow.
Gauguin then returned to France with a new perspective from his experience in Tahiti and painted there for another year, but eventually decided to move back to South Pacific, leaving his wife and 4 kids behind.
How exceptionally convenient.
Yeah, right? What a nice guy. During the last years of his life, he painted his most known paintings in Tahiti, including this one. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? He communicates a story in 3 stages from left to right, each stage corresponding to a question in the painting's title. Can you give me an example of a painter who was heavily influenced by his home country but also by his adopted country, Elizabeth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking of Mexican artist Rufino Tamayo. So Rufino Tamayo was born in Oaxaca, Mexico in 1899, about the same time period as some of these other folks we've been talking about, and is known for his expressive painting style. It's a unique blend of modernism and Mexican identity. Tamayo began his artistic career in Mexico and was particularly inspired by pre-Columbian art, Mexican muralism, and the use of bold colors and symbolism. And as a young man in the 1920s, Tamayo found himself at odds with other artists, such as muralist Diego Rivera, who felt that revolution was the next step for Mexico. And in 1926, Tamayo moved north to New York City. Despite his move, in 1929, he had a one-man show in Mexico City that was met with critical acclaim and media attention. So his ties to his native land continued as a force in his work. However, his arrival on the New York art scene did wonders for his career. Tamayo and his wife, Olga, they lived in New York for until about 1949, and then they moved to Paris. So Tamayo was then incorporating the influences of Cubism, Impressionism, and Fauvism, and then they returned at last to Mexico around 1959. Tamayo built an art museum, and he continued to create significant work into his 90s. I've got a story for you.
Yes,
I always have, I love this. This painting, Tres Personajes, has a fascinating story of its own. It was purchased by a man in Texas as a gift for his wife in 1977, then stolen a decade later, and the painting disappeared. In 2003, a woman in New York City saw the painting in the trash on a sidewalk, and she didn't know anything about it, but she kind of sensed it was something special. 4 years later, she kept trying to research, find out what this painting was about. She saw that it had been featured on an episode of Antiques Roadshow.
Oh, wow.
So she and the former owner got together and arranged to sell the painting at a Sotheby's auction. And in November of 2007, the painting sold for $1,049,000. So I thought that was kind of cool. We've talked about everything about theft and auctions and all of that sort of thing. And this was a great story of how an artwork did not get lost after all. It came back. So Adriana, you're originally from Romania.
Yes, I am.
Do you know any Romanian artists that immigrated?
Yes, I do. We have Constantin Brâncuș. He was a renowned Romanian sculptor who lived from 1876 to 1957. He is considered one of the most influential sculptors of the 20th century and a key figure in the development of modern sculpture. Here are 2 of his most renowned sculptures: Sleeping Muse in Bronze 2 from 1917 and Mademoiselle Pogani 2 from 1920. Brâncuș was born in a small village in Romania. He came from a peasant family and grew up in a rural environment, which later influenced his artistic style. He had a difficult childhood, and at the age of only 11, he permanently left his home and started working on many different jobs
Wow.
while attending the School of Arts and Crafts. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that is a
a
rough
tough
start.
childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
In 1894, he left to study at the National School of Fine Arts in Bucharest, where I studied,
Oh,
but not
great.
arts. He was a very ambitious student. How ambitious, you ask? Well, he decided to pursue further art studies in Paris, like any serious aspiring artist at the time. But because he was extremely poor, he walked on foot from Bucharest to the French capital,
Wow.
nearly dying of pneumonia along the way. If this doesn't describe the passion of an artist for his craft, well, I don't know what will.
That's an amazing.
That's an
yeah.
amazing journey, and there's
Yeah.
even a movie made after his journey called Walking to Paris.
Wow.
I haven't seen it yet, but
Yeah,
it's on my
yeah,
list.
It's on my list too.
3 years later, the sculptor's career looked very promising when he joined the studio of the French master Auguste Rodin.
Oh,
Rodin
gosh.
again. He took everyone under his wing,
Yeah.
or at least all the great ones. But just after a month, Brancusi walked out of his studio.
Oh my gosh.
Years later, he revealed the reason, and he said, "Nothing grows beneath great trees."
Oh,
You got
that is-
goosebumps.
yes, I mean that's really amazing.
That is
Wow.
very amazing. After leaving Rodin's workshop, Brancusi began developing his revolutionary style, simplified forms, delving into more abstract and symbolic representations using direct, undecorated materials. His works became popular in France, Romania, and the United States. Here are two sculptures, both called the Kiss, one by Rodin and the other one by Brancusi. They're so different.
They are.
After the installment of communism in Romania, Brancusi never permanently returned, but he did visit 8 times. He also visited the United States quite a few times because his sculptures were very popular here.
That's interesting.
In 1927, I also have a story for
Oh,
you.
good. Tell me a story.
In 1927, there was a famous case, Constantin Brancusi against United States.
Oh.
And the reason is quite interesting. One of his sculptures, Bird in Space, here's a picture of it, was sent from Paris to New York City for an exhibition. Although the law allowed artworks to enter the United States tax-free, when the sculpture arrived, officials refused to let it in as art because it was so abstract. They refused to see it as a bird.
Oh my goodness.
They classified it under utilitarian object.
What the heck would you use
Under-
that for?
This was under kitchen utensils
no.
and hospital supplies.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a subject to a 40% import tax.
Wow.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to say that Brancusi argued very hard before this happened that his artworks are not abstract.
Oh.
But this was the deciding moment, actually. Brancusi's legal complaint ended with the judge's statement that this is a new abstract form of art and it should be considered. Brancusi and his sculpture had forced the court and the entire public at large to redefine the idea of art.
Wow.
Yes, that was intense.
Yeah.
But not only artists are the ones who move. Ideas from one artist to another can be exchanged. What artists were heavily influenced by the other artist's idea?
Well, you know, I think artists are often deeply influenced by the work of others. And I think, you know, I can think of individual artists, but I want to talk instead about one of the most interesting exchanges in my mind of ideas happened when the European and Japanese art market and the artists intersected over Japanese ukiyo-e prints during a time of increased trade between Japan and Europe. So you kind of referred to this earlier because that you had Paul Gauguin, you know, having that sort of influence from these prints. So ukiyo-e means pictures of the floating world. And the term is used to describe the style of woodblock print that we associate with Hokusai Katsushika, Utagawa Kunisada, and Ando Hiroshige. In the 1860s, as trade between the continents flourished, Japanese art began appearing in European galleries, and artists viewed it with delight. You know, Edgar Degas was one of the artists who began collecting ukiyo-e prints, and the work influenced his art as it did Vincent van Gogh and Henri Toulouse-Lautrec. And he started experimenting with the flat style of the prints and the compositional choices of the woodblock artists. But this is the part that I think is really interesting. The influence was not just one way. Japanese artists were intrigued by contemporary Western art, which had seldom been seen due to isolationist policies over the centuries. So, like artists anywhere, they incorporated the new ideas. Those included things like a horizontal picture plane rather than a vertical one. The use of the European pigment Berlin blue, as well as 1 and 2 point perspective and shading techniques. This famous work by Hokusai demonstrates some of those influences, including Berlin blue. So in this way, what we often think of as a fixed Japanese tradition was actually a thriving and innovative art scene, as ready to incorporate new ideas as the Europeans who were fascinated by Japanese art. Pretty cool, eh?
Really cool. There's no doubt, artists thrive when they are on the move, and their curiosity and sense of adventure led to so many masterpieces.
And to find out more about the artwork that we've shown you here today, and also movie links, book recommendations, that sort of thing, please go to artadventures-tv.com.
And join us next week when we'll be talking about destruction of art.
Oh yeah.
Who does that? How many paintings have been destroyed over the course of years? Let's see. Let's jump into it together.
Look forward to seeing you next week to talk about the destruction of art.
Bye.
Woohoo! Artmobile! I like this skit. I just sit in the car. I think I left half the line out before. Okay.
That has never happened before.
Some actors memorize their lines. Inspiration hits me. That's not exactly the line, is it?
I'm supposed to say something?
I forgot to say what I'm supposed to say. Oh, I don't have my head. Oh, where's my headset?
This actor is missing a lot of things.
Better let the galleries know right now. Or sometime in the next 5 years. Okay, but I'm going to have this planned better. Okay, hang on a second. Galleries know right now.
That is a mess. Whoops. The only thing that bothers me is the mirror. Can we take it off?
No. Hi, I'm Adriana. It's all about me. Oops, I got a little thingy.